Joining me now, Meet the Press moderator, Kristen Welker, and presidential historian Jon Meacham, the Rogers Chair in the American presidency at Vanderbilt, who occasionally advises President Biden on historical matters and big speeches. Kristen, day 3 of the DNC. So how are people feeling about the past 2 days? What has the response been to the speeches you've heard so far?
Well, look, I think that the speeches fired up this convention, Andrea, and I think that they fired up Democrats, quite frankly. And I think that, Michelle Obama spoke in some of the plainest terms that we have ever heard from her when she basically said, now is the time not to wait for a Goldilocks moment with these candidates. Now's the time basically to, quote unquote, do something, as she was quoting. And she basically said, look, trying to make the case, Vice President Harris, Tim Walz, they are the candidates, the best candidates to defeat Donald Trump. It was extraordinary. Remember what we heard from her in 2016, when they go low, we go high. She pivoted from that last night. She took the gloves off. She went directly at Donald Trump and really delivered one of the most excoriating takedowns that we have heard of him, certainly from her, but quite frankly, Andrea, from anyone at this convention thus far. And it's a sign and a little bit of a preview, I think, of what we can anticipate on the campaign trail. And it's a recognition by the Obamas and to some extent by the Democratic Party that in order to defeat Trump, they needed to shift their tactics a little bit. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't think we'll hear that language from Kamala Harris, but it's clear that the Obamas have decided that they're going to go directly after Trump. That's significant.
Yeah, it's a 76-day campaign. There's no time for a big windup. Right. Jon Meacham, let's talk about this moment in history. Unprecedented in so many ways. The enthusiasm we're seeing, the call back to hope made by Michelle Obama, just the way they were orchestrating this, but also, let's face it, the historic change of the nominee that this convention chose and switching just, a month and a few days ago, candidates and a president of the United States giving up power voluntarily. Never before.
Not a huge category, as we know. It's like what President Kennedy once said, that there's a reason Profiles in Courage was short and 1 volume. Not as much material to work with as we would hope. I believe, and President Biden's my friend, I help him when I can. I believe he did a heroic and selfless thing. And by passing the torch, he enabled a very vigorous challenge to an illiberal authoritarian threat that's embodied in Donald Trump. And that's not speculative, right? We've seen what we might get with a second Trump presidency. And so I think what President Biden did will be written about and talked about by people like us forever, as long as the American Republic survives. And it was a decision that is going to help the American Republic survive. I was thinking, conventions. I was thinking as Kristen was talking. President Johnson once said in his first State of the Union in 1965, he said that presidents paint a path forward, forge a path forward by picking up the scattered elements of the American past. It's a wonderful phrase, the scattered elements of the American past. And in many ways, a convention is about trying to figure out what are the timeless values that can be applied in a timely way. And I think the Democrats are doing a terrific job of articulating that case.
And just to follow up, that would validate the decision to introduce not just the biography, but the character issues of these candidates, both through their own voices and the validators like Michelle and Barack Obama. And we shouldn't expect, other than the platform, for the policy issues. I mean, that would be what they would say.
Yeah, and it's all a matrix, obviously. But I think, Andrea, you've lived so much of this as well. Character, in the end, is what matters, because you just don't know what's going to hit the desk in the Oval Office. And so the temperament, the values, the dispositions, the tendency to do good or the tendency to do ill, that's in the heart and soul of the person we send to the pinnacle of power matters enormously. I don't want to overestimate the significance of the American presidency. A democracy is a covenant and a complicated sort of a historical Cuisinart of human motives and human impulses. That said, it is the tip of the spear. It is the fullest manifestation. It's where power and aspiration, or where power and a disposition to advance oneself as opposed to the country meet. And so talking about character, talking about biography is absolutely essential and I think actually responsible.
And Kristen, Doug Emhoff was the validator of his wife and talking about their dating and, joking and self-deprecating about how ham-handed he was when he first met her and was, so smitten. But also this about their family, what he called the blended family, which is so typical of more and more families in America.
Well, it's so significant, Andrea. There's really no better.
Kamala has connected me more deeply to my faith, even though it's not the same as hers. She comes to synagogue with me for high holiday services, and I go to church with her for Easter. I get to enjoy her mom's chili relleno recipe every Christmas, and she makes a mean brisket for Passover.
So that gives an insight into their personal lives.
And it's so significant, Andrea, because there's really no better character witness than Doug Emhoff to Vice President Harris. And here he was taking this convention, the American public, the biggest audience yet, inside their relationship, her role in raising their kids. And that is significant for a range of reasons, because it helps people to understand more about the vice president. Again, she served as vice president for nearly 4 years, but a lot of people not that familiar with her. The other piece of this, though, remember, Republicans, J.D. Vance in particular, have been accusing Democrats of not being family-oriented enough when it comes to their policies. This was a very subtle but firm way to answer some of those criticisms and to say, we are focused on family here, Andrea.
And also talking about his Jewish faith,
yes.
And he's been an important spokesman against anti-Semitism for her as well.
Absolutely. It's one of his biggest issues that he talks about.